one of the things that I do is I will be vulnerable. So if somebody is using language that's really hard for me, really like furthering a certain kind of systemic oppression, and it's impacting me directly, one of the most effective ways I know how to do it is to say, oh, that was really hard for me to hear. Can I tell you why? Right? Or another thing that comes up a lot for me, especially that's kind of gendered, is around fat and fat phobia or language that demonizes folks who are of size, like me. So I could kind of go into like, let me tell you why this word is not great, and let me tell you the historical origins of this world, and I can do all this kind of education. It's generally not effective, right? Most people have some kind of awareness about why we shouldn't be saying some of these things. So it's not about that they need more information, although some people do. It's that they're really not seeing the impact of this language on other people. So the more that I can show up with my vulnerability and say, when I hear that language, when I hear you, talk about women of size in that way, it brings me back to all the times people have talked about me in that way and how hard hearing that language made it for me to show up and trust that when I stood in front of the room, I wasn't being judged, and how that impacts even like what it took for me to stand up in front of a room as a facilitator. So I'll say something that's vulnerable about my experience and ask them to empathize with me. And there's something about having them see my humanity, and it's not about teaching them, that can often invite people into thinking, oh, is this the impact that I actually want to have? Is there something else I can say? And then I might follow up with like, I'm really curious why you chose to say that in that way, and see if I can connect with like what their intention was, and maybe strategize together, like what else could you say to like actually meet that intention that's not so hard for me and other folks to receive. So that's like one of my favorite strategies for doing that. And I imagine a lot of you are going, heck no, I don't want to do that, right? That is a lot of work, a lot of vulnerability, and a lot of making myself vulnerable to someone who just did something that stimulated pain for me, right? And that's a real legitimate response also. I don't do this all the time because sometimes, especially when I don't know the person at all, or even more, when this is a person who has done this repeatedly, making myself vulnerable in this way is basically saying, hey, come on and take another swing at me, right? Let me give you some more ammunition that you can use against me. So I want to be really judicious about how much I'm asking of myself in terms of making the person vulnerable. And if I'm not trusting the situation, if I'm not trusting the person's willingness to at least hear my vulnerability with some degree of openness, I might just say like, whoa, ouch, that was really hard for me to hear, and I'm not up to talking to you about it right now. But I'm really hoping that you go check in with somebody else that you trust about why this might have been hard for me to hear.